Judge Helen Wasilwa delivered her ruling on the doctors' strike that today is on its 61st day, 2 months plus, and going strong, according to the doctors, saying even with these new talks and mediation that have been put in place, they will not back down up until that 2013 CBA is implemented in full. Otherwise, they may talk, but they will stay put in as far as their positions are concerned. Joining me in studio to talk more about this latest development is Jesse Oduor and Duncan Okach. They are both advocates. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay.
So let's begin with, are you surprised with this? Because there are many who said, all right, this is now going to be one of those where, you see a suspension of the sentence, another one, and we have yet another suspension of the sentence.
Sophia, I don't think I'm surprised with the judge's direction on the third, I think the fourth suspension now. We can't keep track of how many suspensions that ruling has taken. Because the first thing, the union officials are the ones to negotiate with the government. If you put them to jail, there is no one the government is going to negotiate with. And they put it very clear that they are very ready to go to jail for the cause that they are going through right now, the industrial action. And therefore, it puts the court and both the government in a very bad position, since the things that have been happening in this country, if there isn't development and anything to go by, and the doctors are still on strike now, 3 months now, then I'm not surprised with the ruling. That is the best direction the judge would have come with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Okach, do you get the sense that initially then the judge and the court boxed itself in with that ruling, directing that there be a jail term to serve that contempt of court, and now finding itself in a position, as he said, if they go to court, it's just again 30 days of them serving their term, but no talks happening, because who then will represent the doctors?
Sophia, that is actually the case, and I think that's why most Kenyans will not be surprised by what has happened in court today. Ideally, the court finds itself at a crossroad. It cannot move either way. The moment it moves, it has a ramification on the impending strike. It has a ramifications on negotiations, and it has a ramification on how fast a solution can be given. And if you hear the judge's sentiments today, the judge is actually saying that the court's image is at risk at this particular point. Actually, the doctors have managed to put the court on the surgeon's table, and we are actually now dissecting the court itself.
Yeah.
And that is a win on their side.
They called the court's bluff, in essence.
Actually, that is it in a nutshell. Yeah,
in a nutshell. Let's talk about some of the other things we heard from the judge, because she said she welcomes the intervention, albeit late, of KNCHR and KOTU. And at some point also mentioning perhaps there could be more interventions that could be coming. So we might very well see this go for the next 7 days, and still other people come to court and say, okay, now we think we're the ones with the silver bullet on this particular matter. So this might keep going on and on.
Yeah, we are likely to see more people coming on board. It was a good thing that KOTU came on board for this one, being the the biggest trade union in the country. And for the Secretary General of KOTU to come in, it was a good thing. He's the senior most trade unionist in the continent, and sits at the International Labour Organization. So the weight of what he speaks in court brings a lot of weight. But then apart from that, you realize that the judge's direction was she's giving mediation a chance. This is what she would have done from the start. We said it here when this case started, that the best thing to do was not to twist the doctors, but then to bring them to the negotiating table and to arbitrate. Or exactly what Justice Ndumanderi did with teachers. He brought in the TSC and the teachers and told them, guys, this is what you are negotiating about. This is what teachers were offered. The judge is now a little bit too late, but then there is still hope. Given that mediation is going to go on, we wish them well.
Yeah,
we wish them well.
And also she says to report back after 7 days, not that she will come and give a ruling after 7 days. So on the 13th of February, we're not necessarily looking for a ruling. We're waiting to hear what these parties, which include KOTU, that will be chairing the meeting, the Council of Governors, the Attorney General's Office, KMPDU, SRC, FKE, Ministries of Finance and Labour as well. So not necessarily a ruling on the 13th, right?
Definitely not necessarily a ruling. What that the implication of that statement is that the contempt repercussions that were hanging on the heads of these particular officials is as good as dead. What we are looking at now is just a report of whether they have agreed or not, and as such, it gives a level playing platform, which is what my learned colleague had indicated before in this show, that without giving them a fair platform, there is no way that they can negotiate in good faith. There's leverage that was actually given to the government. But now, as we speak, and especially with the involvement of a senior statesman like in the like of Atwoli, I believe there's a way forward, and the court is now looking into that direction. And more importantly, and maybe the court may not have said it, and looking at the history of strikes, most of these strikes have been solved by having a word with the man who actually occupies the house on the hill. And I believe with Atwoli's presence, it will just take maybe him taking two of these officials to the house on the hill, and they will actually be able to craft a way forward, and the president can actually direct.
But haven't they met the president already?
They have actually met the president,
yes.
But it's never given that the first meeting will actually bear fruits. Actually, the doctors have learned over the period of time, the government has learned over the period of time, and they know that they must have a solution. So there's nothing wrong with giving it a second chance. The problem is that by the time they were meeting, the government stood its position and the doctors stood their position. But now, with the involvement of a mediator, it's very easy for all of them to actually come to a conclusion, or to actually be made to come to their senses in as far as appreciating the magnitude of this particular issue and the people who are suffering.
Right. It feels like the doctors are just digging in and spoiling for a fight, because being threatened with the worst of it, and they're still going strong, whether it's jail time, whether it's being sacked. So they're like, bring it on. Their resolve appears to have gotten even stronger. So do you see this having to end with the government actually ceding to their demands?
That is, Sophia, I think that is where it's actually ending. It's headed to. If this was a boxing match, then round 1, 2, and 3 doctors have won. Clean game. Because, I mean, the worst thing that could have happened was to take them to jail. I've said, the way you put it, bring it on, you're ready to go to jail. And then the court realized, oh, we blundered. As much as we are taking these guys to jail and they're not blinking, the government is having leverage, as my colleagues put it. But then, to some extent, actually, we have reached here because of the leverage that the government has enjoyed over the time, because the doctors were threatened by jail term. So the government didn't take negotiation seriously. They know whether we negotiate or not, these guys are going to jail. And that is why they have not called for meetings. Since the last time the officials were in court, up to now, the government has not called for the meeting. So who are doctors supposed to negotiate with themselves? So on this one now, the government will actually have to change their game plan and realize, okay, the leverage is gone. Right now, contempt is out of the table. So it's about, let's sit down and talk and see how we are going to end this settlement.
So the doctors have won round 1 and 2, as you say. But the government, on the other hand, will be thinking, if we allow this, if we pay this, we are opening a can of worms. The flood gets in as far as other, public servants, potentially, coming out and saying we're also going to do the same. So isn't this quite a position to find oneself in?
Sophia, on another sense, you must actually understand and empathize with the government, because the finance minister has actually given us the figures, and truly speaking, he has actually indicated that they may not be able to afford. And more importantly is the ramifications of that, as you rightly put it. What about the other players in terms of the civil servants? Anyone will actually go to strike for a strike, they'll actually not obey court orders, and they'll actually expect to twist the government to actually pay them. Eventually, it is our economy. There is no other economy that is going to sustain this particular amount. But having said that, Sophia, you'll appreciate that the doctors have indicated that they have not refused to take the package that was given by the government. The bone of contention mainly is on the CBA itself. How do we move forward? Do we move forward with this CBA? Do we sit down and redraft it? Which issues are there? Actually, the doctors have actually held firm and said that this CBA was signed. The government is just not registering it. However, with Atwoli's presence, what I expect is that they will have to relook into this CBA, say that, yes, we'll take whatever the government offered, go back to work. But as far as the future is concerned, this is how we will move forward. And that will mean that they will come up with a fresh CBA, acceptable to the government, acceptable to the doctors, and which is also feasible in as far as our economy is concerned.
Yeah.
Let me just add something on what Okachi is talking about. You realize that this CBA was not written and drafted by doctors. It was a negotiation, collective bargaining agreement between the government and the doctors. By the time the government was negotiating this CBA, they knew the economy, how it was doing. They knew whether they had the money or not. So by the time you go and negotiate something and offer that this is what you're going to give you already know where that money is going to come from. And this is, as much as other players will come in, they'll also negotiate. By the time they're negotiating, talk about nurses, lecturers, even teachers, or any other civil servant. The government knows very well how much revenue we are making as a country. So by the time you negotiate and give somebody, this is what we are offering you, and then later when it reaches implementation stage and then you now want to take it back and say, now we don't have the money, it doesn't go well. Yeah.
So, Sophia, I think the main issue there, which my learned colleague has not actually alluded to, is the fact that we are a constitutional democracy. As a constitutional democracy, we are guided by the Constitution. The Constitution says that in issues of remuneration and salaries, there's a commission which is independent, which must actually sanction any pay rises, any changes in pay. And that is what the government has said. And you can always craft your CBAs, but where it's a government employee who is concerned, you must actually let the Sarah Serem Commission actually sanction it, because they actually they actually mandated to do that. What the government has been saying is that yes, we agreed and we have actually appended our signature, but before we register it in court, for it to get the power of law, let Sarah Serem say that yes, this is okay with us, it's something that we can manage, it's something that the economy can manage. But now that is where the doctors will not, that's what the doctors don't want to hear. They believe that once the government has signed, that is it. But we must respect our institutions. It is our constitution, and we must be bound by it.
Yeah, because there have been several developments. In the beginning, at the beginning, we saw the Council of Governors were on the same side with the doctors. They have since shifted to the other direction. So is it the reality of where we are as a country with devolution, with healthcare as well being devolved? And because the argument by the government is, in essence, this is a CBA that has been overtaken by events, that it does not quite exist if it would be read strictly by the law. So that leaves people to where then do you go in a time where you're looking at something that, you know, the government will argue was done at a particular time and dispensation of a different constitution?
Actually, the technicalities is actually not the issue. The issue, to me, is not even about the Council of Governors, because the government, the national government, the ministry, is still the employer of teachers and then deploys them to the county level.
Of doctors.
Of doctors, sorry, of doctors. But then at that particular point, SRC, the Sarah Serem Commission, actually, when they are doing the evaluation, what they had and according to their remuneration, the doctors actually getting close to what was negotiated in the CBA.
Okay.
Yeah. So as much as we might call these tethering problems of devolution, I don't think it's a big deal. The only problem we have is, I'm sorry to say this, we have an arrogant government that doesn't live to the realities of the society. How many Kenyans have died for the last 3 months and no one is blinking? When you want to tell us you don't have money at this particular moment, but then you go and campaign for one single person position for AU, and then all of a sudden we have 4.5 billion to campaign for one person, and doctors are only asking for 4 billion. They'll tell us this money was not budgeted for. Who budgeted for Amina Abdallah's money to be spent on AU?
Okay. Let's hear your final thoughts as well as we wind this up, because the question many Kenyans will be asking, those especially that are suffering, you know, do not have that money to go seek medical attention from, you know, private hospitals. You know, we wonder what's next, what's going to happen, what's hope from this situation?
Sophia, the ordinary Mwananchi is suffering, and they are suffering a lot. Many people may not appreciate it, but my learned colleague will actually tell you, even prisoners and the people who we are actually acting for in terms of cases are not actually getting treatment because doctors are on strike. The government doctor is not even testifying in cases because they are on strike. It is actually an issue that is actually going to cripple our country if it has actually not yet crippled it. The way forward, Amina, is for people to talk. That is the solution. Let both parties talk. Let both parties be very honest in their talks. Let them negotiate in good faith. And whatever comes out, let it be informed by reality, both from the government directive perspective and the doctor's perspective. Let us be informed by reality. And in actual sense, the doctors have the Hippocratic oath that they took. The life of a man is actually more important than any other thing. Not even their salary can be compared to a suffering man when they're actually looking at their own remuneration.
All right. Final thoughts?
Final thoughts, I think, as my colleague says, we have to be sober and go back to the negotiation table. At least the chest thumping, the arrogance, and using institutions to frustrate the frustration of the union officials is not doing this country any good. Kenyans are suffering, people are dying, and this strike is not just affecting not affecting the living, it's even affecting the dead. I know we are handling cases where burials cannot happen because postmortem have not happened, because doctors are on strike. Okay. So on the face value, it is something light, but it's affecting a lot of things. It's
affecting a lot of things. Yeah. Definitely a story we'll continue to watch. Gentlemen, thank you. Jesse Odor and Duncan Okach for joining us here on News Center. And stay with us, we still have more in store for you after this short